I'm Abby Hornacek.
This is Tucker Carlson.
And I'm Jessica Tarlov. This is the Fox News Rundown.
Friday, June 18th, 2021. I'm Dave Anthony. While Republicans battle Democrats in Congress, hoping to win back control of the House and the Senate next year, others in the GOP are looking to 2024.
I still feel very strongly about the things that need to be done in this country. I think we missed a lot of opportunities during the Trump years to get things done that we should have gotten done. And there's going to be a lot to fix after 4 years of Joe Biden.
We speak with past and maybe future presidential candidate Chris Christie.
I'm Chris Foster. We're getting less bang for our buck these days with inflation higher than it's been in years.
I don't think they're going to be here by the end of the year, and certainly by this time next year, I think prices will come back in. But, it's uncomfortable, certainly now and for the next few months.
And I'm Todd Pyro. I've got the final word on the Fox News Rundown.
It's happened again. Republicans took Obamacare to the Supreme Court and lost. This time, in a 7-2 ruling, the justices didn't even consider the merits of the case, telling the group of Republican-led states they had no standing, no right to sue in federal court, overturning lower court decisions in the GOP's favor that the health care law is unconstitutional after Congress repealed the penalty for not having insurance, undermining the law's mandate to have coverage. Democrats hailed the Supreme Court ruling. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi.
The Affordable Care Act endures as a pillar of American health and economic security.
Former President Obama, who signed the act into law in 2010, urged more Americans to sign up for a health plan. The Senate's majority leader proclaimed,
"The ACA is here to stay."
Chuck Schumer on the Senate floor right after the ruling.
And now we're going to try to make it bigger and better. Establish once and for all affordable health care as a basic right of every American citizen.
For Republicans, it's back to the drawing board.
Sounds to me like the folks on the court decided they wanted to dodge the issue.
Former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie also ran for president in 2016, and the Republican may run again in 24.
Normally, when courts, especially the Supreme Court, finds a process reason not to hear something, it's because they don't want to deal with the substance reason, and they probably didn't have a consensus on the substance reason. And that's very interesting, given all of the appointments Republicans have had to that court now. When you think about the three that President Trump had, and Sam Alito and Clarence Thomas and John Roberts, all Republican appointees on the court, that means that you couldn't get 5 of those 6 to agree that Obamacare was unconstitutional, as the Texas court had found. So it seems to me that, some of those people that President Trump appointed, more likely than not, given the way Justices Alito and Thomas have voted before, would seem to me that at least one, if not more, of those 3 decided they didn't want to deal with the substance of the issue, and they took the dodge.
For a long time, Republicans have accused Democrats of using the court to try to get things changed that they can't do, say, legislatively. Republicans have tried numerous times to use the court to get rid of Obamacare, and it hasn't worked. So what is next with health care policy for Republicans, in your view?
Well, listen, first off, Republicans had the opportunity to do it when they were in control of all 3 areas, right? House, Senate, and the White House, and they couldn't get it done. And so that was a failure, quite frankly, of the folks in the Congress who were in control of the Congress at the time, who couldn't put together a plan that could muster a majority of Republican votes in both the House and Senate. And so, I think what we need to do is to reexamine how we're approaching this entire issue and come up with a plan that we can get majority Republican support behind. And that's going to take a little thinking and a little talking with all the people in the House and in the Senate on the Republican side, because let's face it, if things go the way I believe they will in 2022, we're going to be back in control of the House, and we could well be in control of the Senate as well. So, we're going to have another opportunity to put some things on President Biden's desk to make his life difficult in this regard, and we should get a consensus among our own party, which is the big failing that we haven't done as a party during the Trump years.
At the moment, the big issue is infrastructure, trying to come up with a compromise, and Democrats may go on their own and do even more than what the compromise is.
Look, I think Republicans have put forward some very reasonable ideas on infrastructure, and I think what the American people want from an infrastructure plan is for the money to be spent on infrastructure. on roads and highways and bridges and tunnels and airports, the electric grid and Wi-Fi. Those are the things they want it spent on, and they don't want it spent on social programs. So, I think if Republicans put together a really solid plan in that regard, I think it's going to be very difficult for President Biden to say no. And so we've just got to keep digging away at it and not give in. And I think if the Democrats do go forward with the plan that President Biden put forward, it's going to be bad for the country, but good for the Republican Party because it's going to make them seem even more extreme and give us an even better chance of winning back the House and the Senate in 22.
When it comes to those midterms, though, you have the Republicans who are in Congress. You're also going to have a lot of involvement by former President Trump. He's certainly still very much involved in the Republican Party politics, leading the way. How do you see him looming over the next elections?
Listen, I think that he'll play an important role in districts where he is popular. And I think if he's smart, he'll stay out of districts where he isn't. The goal here is to win back a majority in the House and a majority in the Senate. I think that, a lot of mistakes were made that cost us the United States Senate in that Georgia special election with too much talk of looking backwards and rigged and stolen elections. And those are not things that people vote for. And by the way, those Georgia elections proved that it's not what people vote for. So I hope that whoever is going to go out and support 2022 congressional candidates, and I'm certainly going to be one of those folks, we need to be talking about a forward-looking, positive agenda from us and a real specific criticism of the things that President Biden and the Democrats are doing, and no discussion of 2020. 2020 is over. It's in the rearview mirror. We should keep it there. And any conversation of that, whether it's by President Trump or anybody else, is destructive to the Republican Party.
But in 2024, if former President Trump runs again, 2020 will certainly be a big issue, won't it?
Well, you would think it would be, although what I would hope is if the president ran again, that he would be talking about the future and not the past. And I think the only chance that Republicans have to win in 2024 is to be talking about the future and not the past, no matter who the candidate is.
What about you? You've been talked about a lot. Obviously, you know that. For 2024, you have said that you were not going to make up your mind, I guess, right, until after 2022, correct?
Yes, sir. I wouldn't rule it out. I wouldn't rule it out at all. I still feel very strongly about the things that need to be done in this country. I think we missed a lot of opportunities during the Trump years to get things done that we should have gotten done. And there's going to be a lot to fix after 4 years of Joe Biden. And so, I'm certainly giving it thought. But I think it's much too early to make that kind of decision. The world changes so quickly that to make a decision now would be foolish. So we'll wait. We're going to work hard to help people in the midterms in 2022 and help the party at both the congressional level and the governor level. And then we'll see what it looks like in December of 2022.
I mean, it's certainly not unheard of. Joe Biden ran 3 times. Hillary ran twice. Mitt Romney ran twice. Bob Dole ran twice. Ronald Reagan even ran twice. So it's not out of the ordinary for someone to take a second crack at it and be successful. What would you think you would have to do differently to be successful?
Well, the times will be different, and I certainly learned a good deal from the last race, which was probably one of the most unusual ones in American history. But I think, what you have to do is to tell the American people the truth. They deserve the truth, and they've gotten a lot of falsehoods told to them over the last number of years. They need the truth told to them directly, bluntly, and they need a plan that makes them understand that our children's education is the most important thing that this country can focus on, making sure our kids are being taught the right things about our country and our history, and that education and a great education is available to every child in this country. That's the only thing that's going to help us beat China in this long struggle we're now engaged in with them. And we need to have someone who's going to be much tougher on China than we have certainly with Joe Biden right now. And quite frankly, even than we had with President Trump, who regularly called President Xi a good person. I don't think President Xi is a good person. I don't think President Xi deserves credit for much of anything. He's a dictator. He's engaged in genocide in his own country to repress political thought and opposition. And he is stealing American intellectual property left and right and breaking trade agreements on a regular basis. This is not a good person. This is not a friend. This is an adversary, and it's one of the places where President Trump, I think, made a big mistake in calling presidency a good person and a friend.
What if Donald Trump is a candidate in 2024 again? He announces in 2023 that he's going to run again. Would that stop you?
No, it would not.
Okay. You don't. I mean, it's possible that you might be on the same stage with some other people, like maybe Marco Rubio runs again, maybe Ted Cruz runs again. It's possible, right?
Sure. And look, I think the decision of running for president is an intensely personal one, and one that you've got to decide in your own heart and your own mind whether it's something you want to do and whether you have something unique to offer the country. And that should not be determined by anybody, whether anybody else runs or not. If you let other people determine whether you're going to run or not, you probably aren't fit to be president anyway.
You brought up China. I want to go there because of what's going on with everyone wanting another investigation into the origins of COVID. China's not going to cooperate. How do we do this? How do you think it should be done to try to figure out? You've been an investigator, a prosecutor over in your career. How would you do it?
Well, I think between both our intelligence agencies and capability, and also we need to put heat on the World Health Organization. The World Health Organization wants to be funded by the United States, wants us to be a part of what they do. They should be demanding of China to give straight answers on what's going on here, and we need to use them as a tool as well, or they become much less useful to us going forward. Because if they can't help determine what caused a worldwide pandemic, then why do we have the World Health Organization at all?
You had COVID.
Yes, sir.
How difficult was that? Was it a scary moment, scary time for you?
It was very scary for me because I spent 7 days in the intensive care unit. And so it was a very difficult time for me and a scary time for me and for my family. But fortunately, I got great health care at the hospital in Morristown, New Jersey, and I took the monoclonal antibody treatment, which I really do believe was determinative in me getting a good result. And so I think, I have to tell you, I'm so grateful to the American pharmaceutical industry. When you think about what that industry has done for the entire world in the creation of monoclonal antibodies as a treatment and in the creation of these vaccines, nowhere else in the world could have gotten this done. And I think we need to be taking a whole different look at our pharmaceutical industry. A lot of politicians use the pharmaceutical industry as a piñata, and they're certainly not perfect. But let me tell you, they just saved the world.
You have been very vocal trying to get people to get vaccinated. Is it worrying you to see the demand slow some and more people, especially who might be along the conservative line of thinking, not wanting the shots?
It is, and I'll tell you why. My view on this is everyone's got the right to choose what they want to do. But to me, it's like putting your seatbelt on in the car. It's not going to guarantee you that if you get in a serious accident that you might not be hurt or even killed, but it makes it much, much, much less likely. And these vaccines have proven to be extraordinarily effective with almost no downside to them. This is a very random, dangerous virus. You do not want to play with it because if you get it, it can cause you real serious problems.
Former New Jersey Governor, 2016 presidential candidate, Republican Chris Christie, thank you very much for joining us.
Always great to be with you. Call anytime.
This is Todd Pyro with your Fox News commentary coming up.
You may have noticed things cost more now. Demand for goods and services is higher as more people are getting vaccinated for coronavirus and businesses and travel restrictions are lifted. Supply, though, has not caught up with that demand. Fed Chair Jerome Powell predicts that'll work itself out and that the high inflation rate we're seeing won't last long, but
bottlenecks, hiring difficulties, and other constraints could continue to limit how quickly supply can adjust, raising the possibility that inflation could turn out to be higher and more persistent than we expect.
Overall, for now, consumer prices are about 5% higher than this time last year, the fastest pace since 2008. Take out food and energy, which fluctuate more, and it's the highest inflation rate since 1992.
Well, we're seeing it for a lot of commodities. So copper prices, lumber prices, oil is up.
Mark Zandi's the chief economist at Moody's Analytics.
And industrial goods, in large part because of global supply chain disruptions related to the pandemic. We're also seeing big price increases in industries that are just normalizing, getting back to pre-pandemic kind of pricing, like the airline industry or the rental car business or restaurant prices. They're just getting back to where they were. So that's where the biggest price increases are, at least at this point in time.
How much of this is a mirage? I mean, some prices dropped at the start of the pandemic. So if you look at the year-over-year inflation, obviously it looks like it's possibly worse than maybe it really is. Is it a function of that, or is it still higher relative to what we were paying for things before the pandemic?
Oh, inflation's up, but it's not. You're right. It's not as up as to the degree that the year-over-year numbers suggest. That's because if you go back a year ago, obviously that was the teeth of the pandemic, when businesses were shut down and just slashing prices to generate any kind of demand they could. So when you compare it to what happened last year, inflation looks really, really high. It's not, but it's still up nonetheless. I mean, there still are a lot of disruptions out there that are, making it more difficult for producers to produce, and the result is higher prices. I don't think they're going to be here by the end of the year, and certainly by this time next year, I think prices will come back in. But it's uncomfortable certainly now and for the next few months.
Just looking at the politics of it, I mean, the Biden White House says, look, this is a validation of our policies. It means that demand is up. Republicans are saying, look, it's Jimmy Carter. It's the late 70s all over again. How much do presidents' policies really affect things like inflation and gas prices? I mean, you're saying it's mostly due to the supply chain.
Yeah, this is the pandemic, right? The pandemic nailed the economy. The businesses had to shut down, and things went dark for a while, and now we're reopening, and we're reopening very, very rapidly. Demand is surging as a result, and it's just taking a little bit of time for manufacturers and home builders and all kinds of businesses to turn the lights back on and start getting back up and running at full tilt. So, it's demand supply. You get a big surge in demand. Supply hasn't kept up quite yet, and so you get these price jumps. But supply will catch up. Businesses can make a lot of money here. They're getting a really good price, and they'll figure out how to ramp up activity. At the same time, people who are buying stuff are going to respond too. They're going to adjust. Like home builders are already trying to think of ways of building homes with less lumber. So we're all doing that for the things that we're paying more for. So demand and supply adjust, and I suspect by the fall and again by the end of the year, the prices will come right back in.
How about home prices? They've been basically out of control. People are looking to buy. Is there a housing shortage? Is that being exacerbated by the lumber shortage, which will work itself out within a year?
Yeah, well, demand for housing has gone skyward, right? Because mortgage rates have gone to record lows. I mean, they're still close to 3% for a 30-year fix. I mean, that's just an incredible bargain. And then the work from anywhere dynamic that was created by the pandemic also juiced things up, and that got layered on top of a very severe shortage of homes, particularly affordable homes, lower price, middle price point homes. They never really got built to any significant degree after the financial crisis. So it's a confluence of things that are come together and created this surge in prices. But I do think once mortgage rates start to push up a little bit, they're already starting to push up, and you can kind of feel demand is already starting to weaken because of the affordability issues. And of course, the builders are now responding because they can make money even with these higher lumber prices. They can make a lot of money, and so we're getting more supply. So we will see, I think, house price growth also moderate. The other thing, of course, is going to happen here is as the economy does reopen and work from anywhere dynamic does start to unwind, at least to some degree, people start going back to New York and L.A. and San Francisco, that's going to take a little bit of juice out of the market. So I would expect house price growth here to slow, and some of the most active markets may even see some price decline.
How about gas prices? Some analysts are saying, look, I see a big energy spike the next 2-3 years. Do you agree, disagree? How come?
No, I don't. I mean, because there's a surfeit of oil capacity out there. I mean, prior to the pandemic, the globe was producing 100 million barrels of oil a day, got down to 90 million barrels a day because demand collapsed during the pandemic. Now demand is right back up, and so we've seen oil prices come back up. But, the producers of oil, particularly the big global producers, Saudi Arabia, Russia, they're only slowly bringing back that capacity they took offline back online because they're enjoying these higher prices. But the higher prices will ultimately get them to open up the spigot. We'll get more oil. We'll go back up to 100 million barrels a day, and I think oil prices will come right back in. I mean, just to give you a number, oil today is going for say $70-$75 a barrel, when everything kind of irons itself out, should be back down to around $50-$55 a barrel. So that means the difference between a gallon of gasoline, regular unleaded, going for over $3 a gallon to something less than $3 a gallon.
Okay. Even with summer demand, it'll work itself out.
Yeah, I'm kind of abstracting from the vagaries of the seasonality here. Yeah, you might see, particularly this summer, because everybody they want to go out, they want to travel, they're pent up. So, and they can't go overseas because the pandemic is still raging, so they probably stick close to home. So, yeah, maybe this summer, for the next few months, it'll be elevated. But, looking through that, I do think oil prices and gasoline prices will come right back in.
Let me ask you about jobs and wages. On one hand, new unemployment claims are up for the first time since April, yet we have all these restaurant owners saying, I can't get anybody to come and work. Now, is it as simple as, look, one has nothing to do with the other? Some industries are laying off people while hospitality is just trying to get back up to speed?
Yeah, the UI claims, they go up and down and all around week to week. I wouldn't pay any attention. They are coming in. I mean, in fact, last week they only rose because 2 states reported higher UI claims. That could just be measurement issue. The reporting, there's a lot of squirrely things going on in various UI systems. So I wouldn't read anything into that. The job market is improving very rapidly. A lot of open positions, a lot of hiring going on. Layoffs are at record lows. It's a really good job market. So the labor market is tight. I do think what's going on with restaurants and hotels and all these industries that got shut down during the pandemic, they all came back to life all at the same time. And employers put up the proverbial help wanted sign everywhere at the same time, and it just takes a little bit of time for people to who got laid off or haven't been working, been home taking care of kids or elderly parents, to sort out their life. They got to figure that out. And they can't do that in a week or 2 or 3, maybe not even a month or 2 or 3. But I suspect by, September, when schools reopen in earnest and, people have had a chance to kind of figure things out, the restaurants will be able to find those workers, hotels will be able to find the staff, and, these labor shortages will abate.
Wages have gone up a little past expectations, most people's expectations over the last couple of months. And do you expect that to continue? And how does that play into inflation? Are we hitting a point where just naturally it's time for wages to go up and maybe prices to go up?
Yeah, wage growth has held up admirably well during the pandemic, and they're strong. And I would expect them to continue to accelerate because the labor market, remember back before the pandemic, I know it's hard because it's just such a long time ago in every sense, but the biggest problem for businesses across the board, bar none, was the labor market. It was really tight, excruciatingly tight. People were having trouble finding workers, and they were pushing up wages. We're just going right back to that. So, the pandemic was this very dark interlude, and now we're going to get to the other side, and, we're going to be faced with the same kind of situation that was before. The demographics are, tough here, and so wages are going up. Now, that doesn't necessarily have to be inflationary, because the good news here is that productivity growth has also picked up quite meaningfully since the pandemic hit, and some of that's the pandemic, and won't be sustained. But it does feel like businesses are really focusing on trying to improve the productivity of their workforce. So we could get, higher wage growth and stronger productivity growth. That's a win-win. Everybody wins. Workers win, businesses win, investors win. That's the kind of economy that we want. So there's reason to be optimistic here that this plays out in a very positive way.
You mentioned, just real briefly, one more question. You mentioned people trying to sort out their child care situation, maybe their parental care situation, and all that is part of what more liberal Democrats in Congress are trying to push in this infrastructure bill, what they're calling human infrastructure. And of course, Republicans say no, roads, bridges, broadband internet. Have you run numbers on how programs like child care, some free college, could help productivity to the point where they're actually cost effective?
Yeah, I mean, those kind of programs, infrastructure is more about productivity, helping to improve the output per worker, because, businesses will be more productive if they have better infrastructure. The child care, the education, the housing, that's about improving labor force participation. So we've got, a lot of workers that, we have pretty low labor force participation rates in this country compared to other developed countries, particularly for female workers, and that largely goes to the costs of working, the child care costs, the commute costs, those kinds of things, the issues around paid family leave. And so if we can improve those things, if we can make it cheaper for people to work, they'll work, and we'll get higher labor force participation. And both are important to long-term economic growth. We need productivity gains, but we also need to attract more people into the workforce because, again, our number one problem in the not-too-distant future is going to be finding workers.
Mark Zandi, Chief Economist at Moody's Analytics. Mark, thank you very much.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate the opportunity.
From the Fox News Podcasts Network.
I'm Ben Domenech, publisher of The Federalist, and I'm inviting you to join a new conversation with the smartest thinkers out there about the country and where we're going. Subscribe to the Ben Domenech Podcast.
Subscribe and listen now by going to foxnewspodcasts.com.
And now, some good news with Tanya J. Powers.
Father's Day is this weekend, a time to celebrate the contribution of dads. Father's Day is observed every year on the third Sunday of June, and the holiday goes back more than 100 years. Sonora Smart Dodd, the daughter of an American Civil War veteran, is generally credited with coming up with the idea. She was moved by a church sermon about how Anna Jarvis had founded Mother's Day in honor of her mother, so Dodd requested June 5th, her father's birthday, as a day to honor fatherhood. The church finally settled on the date June 19, 1910, when the first Father's Day was celebrated in Spokane, Washington. In 1966, President Lyndon B. Johnson declared the third Sunday in June Father's Day with a presidential proclamation. Happy Father's Day, dads. Tanya J. Powers, Fox News.
It's time for your Fox News commentary.
Todd Pyro. What's on your mind?
That's most of what dads do is take it's what we do. That line from the movie Daddy's Home, you know, the one that's always on basic cable at 3 p.m. on a Saturday, won't go down in history alongside, I'm going to make him an offer he can't refuse. But no quote sums up fatherhood so brilliantly, and us dads wouldn't have it any other way. Oh, sure, we still love to complain about the job, one in which both sleeping and eating are events that need to be calendared, where your bank account gets drained instead of direct deposited, where your tiny boss throws major temper tantrums out of the blue. And this doesn't include any of the gross stuff. But the benefits at this job, now that's where the good stuff is. Laughs that validate your reason for being. Finger grabs that touch your soul. Smiles that melt your heart. Of course, this Father's Day is extra special to me because it's my first. And man, am I ever playing the part of dad in the typical dad ways. If you are a light, I'm turning you off. If you are air conditioning, I am turning you up a half degree when no one's looking. I celebrate a forecast of rain like I won the Super Bowl because it means I don't have to water. Dad jokes? I mean, come on, have you seen Fox and Friends First? And let's just say the 20 pounds I've packed on since birth have put me squarely in dad bod territory for the upcoming beach season. But while you always hear, just wait to see how your life will change once you have a kid, I love the changes, even though it means an already difficult schedule has grown near impossible. For instance, I never envisioned my life could get any more taxing than a daily middle-of-the-night wake-up call. Ha! Now mix that in with a 6:30 p.m. bedtime thanks to baby tasks, and there's a good chance that I lose consciousness by Friday each week. But when I just don't think I could push it out anymore, I get fueled by baby giggles and realize there's nothing else I'd rather be doing. Let's face it, I already had my dream job before baby. I get to deliver the news, interview guests on the most important topics of the day, and make people laugh every now and again. But now, on my first Father's Day, I know what it's like to have the greatest job in the world. It's awesome to finally be part of the club. And no, I don't need the ubiquitous tie as a gift. Being a dad is the best gift ever. I am Todd Pyro, anchor of Fox and Friends First.
You've been listening to the Fox News Rundown. Stay up to date by subscribing to this podcast at foxnewspodcasts.com. And for up-to-the-minute news, go to foxnews.com. Did you hear the news? Now you can. With instant updates from Fox News for Amazon Alexa. Just say,
Alexa, play news from Fox.
In Fox News.
It's the latest when you need it, on demand, from Fox News and Amazon Alexa.